The harsh winter wind howled through the ancient forest of shadow pine, where massive trees groaned under the weight of fresh snow. Deep within this frozen wilderness, a mother bear named Aurora lay in her den, her breath coming in quick gasps. She had chosen this cave carefully months ago, knowing her time would come. The air inside was thick with warmth, a sharp contrast to the biting cold beyond the entrance. Aurora had given birth before, but something felt different this time. Her instincts, which had guided her through countless seasons, were sending strange signals she couldn't understand. The cave walls seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy as her labor intensified. Soft whimpers escaped her throat, echoing off the stone walls. Far above the den, the northern lights danced across the sky in brilliant waves of green and purple, casting an eerie glow through the cave's entrance. Aurora's massive form shuddered as the first cub arrived, then the second, third, and fourth in quick succession. Each tiny being was perfect, wet fur already beginning to fluff in the warm air of the den, their tiny paws kneading instinctively. But then came the fifth birth, and Aurora's eyes widened in disbelief. The creature that emerged was unlike anything she had ever seen in her long years in the forest. Where there should have been fur, there was smooth, pale skin that seemed to shimmer in the strange light. Instead of the rounded ears of a bear cub, this being had features that made Aurora's heart race with confusion and an inexplicable sense of wonder. The strange infant let out a cry that was neither bear nor any creature Aurora had ever encountered. It was a sound that seemed to make the very air in the cave vibrate with an ancient power. As she stared at this mysterious fifth birth, her maternal instincts warred with her wild nature. The 4 bear cubs squirmed closer to her warmth, but this other being, this impossible child, lay apart, its skin glowing faintly in the darkness. Aurora's protective instincts surged as she watched her strange new offspring. The tiny being's chest rose and fell with delicate breaths, each one seeming more precious than the last. In all her years roaming the vast wilderness of shadow pine forest, she had never encountered anything like this. The legends passed down through generations of bears spoke of ancient magic in these woods, but Aurora had always considered them nothing more than stories told during long winter nights. The mysterious infant's skin continued to shimmer with an inner light that reminded Aurora of the phosphorescent moss that grew in the deepest parts of the forest. As she watched, transfixed, the northern lights above intensified, their cosmic dance casting sheets of color through the cave entrance. The strange child responded to the light show, its own glow pulsing in perfect harmony with the Aurora's rhythm. Suddenly, a deep rumble shook the cave, causing loose pebbles to cascade from the ceiling. The 4 bear cubs pressed closer to their mother's warm fur, whimpering softly, but the 5th child remained eerily calm, its unusual eyes now open and fixed on the cave's entrance. Those eyes held wisdom that seemed impossible for a newborn. They were the color of ancient amber, with flecks of gold that sparkled like stars. A new sound reached Aurora's ears, the padding of heavy paws approaching her den. Her muscles tensed instinctively, ready to defend her cubs. The scent that drifted in was familiar yet different, carrying notes of pine sap and winter frost, but also something else, something that made her fur stand on end. Through the swirling snow at the cave's mouth, a massive shape began to emerge. The figure that stepped into view was unlike any bear Aurora had ever seen. Its fur was the pure white of fresh snow, but it seemed to shift and change colors like the northern lights themselves. The stranger's eyes glowed with the same otherworldly light as her mysterious 5th child. As it moved deeper into the cave, Aurora could see symbols etched in light across its massive shoulders, pulsing with power that made the air thick with ancient magic. The white bear's gaze fell upon the strange infant, and a sound like distant thunder rumbled in its chest. Aurora's maternal instincts screamed at her to attack, to protect all her children, but something deeper held her back. There was no malice in the visitor's presence, only recognition and perhaps even hope. The mysterious bear opened its mouth to speak, and Aurora realized that her world was about to change forever. The voice that emerged was like winter wind through ancient trees, carrying the weight of centuries within each word. "Aurora of Shadowpine," the white bear rumbled, "your fifth child is a blessing foretold in the oldest stories of our kind." The massive creature lowered its head in what appeared to be a gesture of respect. "I am Lumen, guardian of the northern realms, and I have waited 300 winters for this moment." Aurora's protective instincts remained sharp, but curiosity began to override her fear. Her strange fifth child had begun to emit a soft, melodious humming that seemed to harmonize with the very air around them. The 4 bear cubs, rather than showing fear, appeared mesmerized by their unusual siblings' gentle song. Lumen moved closer, each step leaving temporary impressions of ghostly light on the cave floor. "In the time before time," the guardian continued, "when the barriers between realms were thin as morning mist, beings of pure light walked these forests alongside our ancestors. They were known as the Luminarii, and they kept balance in all things." The white bear's eyes grew distant with memory, but as humans spread across the land, the Luminari retreated to their own realm, leaving only whispers of their existence in our oldest tales. The strange infant's glow intensified as Lumine spoke, casting dancing shadows on the cave walls that seemed to illustrate the ancient story. Aurora watched in amazement as her mysterious child reached out with delicate fingers, so different from the paws of its siblings, toward the guardian bear. The air between them sparkled with tiny points of light, like stars fallen to earth. "But they left us a promise." Lumine's voice grew softer, filled with wonder. "Every 1,000 years, when the celestial dance of lights reaches its peak, a Luminari child would be born to the most worthy mother in the forest. This child would help restore the ancient harmony between all realms." The guardian's gaze met Aurora's. "You were chosen, Aurora. Your heart, your strength, your capacity for love, these qualities made you the perfect guardian for this miraculous being." The 4 bear cubs had begun to stir more actively now, their tiny paws reaching for their glowing sibling. To Aurora's amazement, when they touched the luminous skin of their unusual brother or sister, their own fur briefly sparkled with the same ethereal light. A warmth unlike anything she had ever known spread through her chest as she watched the interaction. But Lumine's expression suddenly grew grave, the patterns of light across their shoulders dimming slightly. "However, this gift comes with great responsibility and great danger. There are those who have waited centuries for this moment, Aurora, and not all of them wish to see the ancient balance restored. Dark forces stir in the deepest shadows of Shadowpine Forest, and they will stop at nothing to prevent this child from fulfilling its destiny." As if in response to these ominous words, a cold wind howled outside the cave, carrying with it the scent of something ancient and malevolent. The northern lights above flickered and dimmed, momentarily plunging the cave into darkness. When they brightened again, Aurora saw that Lumine's fur was bristling, the magical symbols now pulsing with increased urgency. "We must prepare," the guardian declared, scanning the cave entrance with alert eyes. "The first test of your commitment approaches swiftly, Aurora. The question is not whether you can protect this child, it is whether you are willing to face the trials that come with being chosen by the light itself." The words had barely left Lumine's mouth when a bone-chilling howl echoed through the forest. This was no ordinary wolf's cry. It carried within it the sound of shattering ice and crumbling stone. Aurora's cubs huddled closer to her, their tiny bodies trembling. The luminous child, however, remained serene, its golden eyes fixed on the cave entrance with an unnerving calmness that seemed far too knowing for a newborn. Shadow wolves, Lumine growled, the magical symbols across their shoulders now blazing with intense light. They serve the Dark One, an ancient being who has waited centuries for this moment. These creatures are not of our world. They are formed from the very shadows that lurk between realms. Aurora's maternal instincts surged with newfound strength. She rose to her feet, careful not to disturb her cubs, and positioned herself between her children and the cave entrance. The movement sent waves of pain through her body. She was still weak from giving birth, but her determination burned stronger than any physical discomfort. The temperature in the cave plummeted suddenly, and Aurora's breath came out in visible clouds of vapor. Dark shapes began to materialize at the entrance, first as wisps of shadow, then taking more solid form. The shadow wolves emerged from the darkness, their bodies seeming to absorb what little light remained. Their eyes glowed with an eerie purple fire, and their fur appeared to be made of living darkness itself, constantly shifting and swirling like smoke. "Remember, Aurora," Lumine spoke urgently, moving to stand beside her. "They cannot touch the light directly. Your special child's power, though new, is their greatest weakness, but the little one is not yet strong enough to defend itself. You must protect them all until the moonrise, when the ancient wards can be renewed." The largest of the shadow wolves stepped forward, its massive paws leaving trails of frost on the cave floor. When it spoke, its voice was like ice scraping against stone. "Give us the luminary child, Guardian, and we will spare the others. Fight us, and none will survive this night." Its dark fur rippled with malevolent energy as more of its pack emerged from the shadows, their numbers growing with each passing moment. Aurora felt a gentle touch against her back leg and glanced down to see her luminous child had somehow moved closer to her. The infant's glow had intensified, creating a soft sphere of light around itself and its siblings. The 4 bear cubs, instead of cowering in fear, had formed a protective circle around their unusual sibling, their small bodies pressing close together. What happened next occurred so quickly that Aurora barely had time to react. The shadow wolves launched their attack as one, their smoky forms surging forward like a tide of darkness. But at that same moment, Aurora's mysterious child released a pulse of pure light that filled the entire cave. The shadow wolves nearest to them recoiled with otherworldly shrieks, their forms temporarily disrupted by the radiance. Lumen sprang into action, their massive white form becoming a blur of motion and light. The guardian bear's claws left trails of brilliant energy in the air as they tore through the shadowy forms of their enemies. Aurora fought with equal ferocity, her maternal strength enhanced by something she didn't quite understand. Each time she struck at a shadow wolf, her claws seemed to glow with borrowed light from her luminous child. But the shadow pack was relentless. For each wolf that dissipated into smoke, 2 more seemed to form from the darkness. Aurora's strength was fading fast, the exertion of battle taking its toll on her already exhausted body. A particularly large shadow wolf slipped past her defense, its jaws aimed for the cubs. Aurora's heart nearly stopped. She was too far away to intercept it in time. Yet, just before the wolf's shadowy fangs could reach their target, something extraordinary happened. The 4 bear cubs, moving with unexpected coordination, stood up on their hind legs. As they did, the light emanating from their unusual sibling seemed to flow through them. their tiny forms began to glow with the same otherworldly radiance, and when they roared, a sound that should have been impossible for cubs so young, it carried the force of ancient magic. The shadow wolf was thrown backward, its smoky form dissipating instantly upon contact with the cub's combined light. The remaining shadow pack hesitated, their glowing purple eyes showing the first signs of fear. The temperature in the cave began to rise again as the dark creature's influence weakened. The leader of the shadow wolves snarled in frustration, its form flickering between solid and smoke. "This is not over," it growled, its voice echoing with supernatural menace. "The Dark One's hunger grows stronger with each passing century. We will return, and next time, not even the combined light of your pathetic family will be enough to save you." With a final snarl of defiance, the shadow wolves dissolved into wisps of darkness that slithered away into the night, leaving behind only patches of frost on the cave floor and the lingering scent of ancient malevolence. The sudden silence was broken only by the heavy breathing of Aurora and Lumine, and the soft musical humming of the luminous child. Aurora rushed to check on her cubs, her heart still racing from the battle. To her amazement, none of them showed any signs of fear or distress. Instead, the 4 bear cubs were gathered around their glowing sibling, their fur still shimming faintly with residual light. The special child reached out with delicate fingers, touching each cub's nose in turn, causing small sparkles of light to dance between them like playful fireflies. "What you witnessed was only the beginning," Lumine said, moving closer to examine the cubs. The guardian bear's white fur was slightly singed in places where the shadow wolves had managed to land attacks, but the magical symbols across their shoulders still pulsed with steady light. "The bond between your cubs and the luminary child is unprecedented. Never in all our histories has there been record of regular bear cubs sharing in the light's power this way." Aurora watched as her luminous child, who she had begun thinking of as Dawn in her heart, created small spheres of light that floated around the cave like gentle stars. The other cubs batted at them playfully, their earlier battle courage now transformed into innocent joy. The sight filled her with both wonder and worry. "But how can this be?" Aurora asked, finding her voice for the first time since the strange night began. "My cubs are only newly born. How could they stand against creatures of shadow?" She nuzzled each of her children in turn, breathing in their scents, 4 carrying the familiar smell of bear cubs, but Dawn's scent was like morning dew and starlight. Lumen settled down beside the family, their massive form creating a protective barrier between them and the cave entrance. The old stories speak of something called the Circle of Light, a prophesied gathering of 6 beings whose combined power could restore balance to all realms. For centuries we thought it referred to 6 different luminari, but perhaps— the Guardian's eyes gleamed with sudden understanding. "Perhaps we misinterpreted. The prophecy never specified what kind of beings they would be." As if in response to these words, Dawn created another floating sphere of light, larger than the others. Within its glow, images began to form, like a window into another world. Aurora and her cubs watched in fascination as scenes played out in the magical light. Vast forests untouched by darkness, creatures of light and shadow living in harmony, and bears who walked paths of starlight between the realms. "These are memories of the world as it once was," Lumine explained softly, "before the Dark One's hunger began to consume the light. The Luminari were not just beings of power. They were peacekeepers, maintaining balance between all forces. When they retreated, that balance was lost." The Guardian's voice grew heavy with emotion. "The Dark One was once a guardian of shadow, meant to protect the necessary darkness that all worlds need. but without the luminary's influence it became corrupted, consuming more and more until its hunger became insatiable. Dawn's light sphere shifted, showing new images, ones that made Aurora's fur stand on end. Vast swathes of forest consumed by living darkness, creatures transformed into shadow servants, and a massive, formless being of pure darkness that seemed to devour light itself. The 4 bear cubs pressed closer to their mother, but Dawn remained serene, watching the images with those wise, ancient eyes. "The Dark One grows stronger with each passing century," Lumine continued. "It has devoured 3 entire realms already, adding their power to its own. The shadow wolves you fought tonight were just a small fraction of its forces. Soon it will be strong enough to break through the ancient barriers that still protect this realm." The guardian bear turned to look at Dawn. "Unless—" Before Lumen could finish, the cave was suddenly filled with a new presence. The northern lights above intensified to an almost blinding degree, and a voice like wind chimes and rushing water filled their minds. "Unless the circle of light is completed before the next solar eclipse." The source of the voice materialized in the center of the cave, a being of pure light in the form of a tall, elegant figure. Its presence was both beautiful and terrifying, like staring into the heart of a star. Aurora's cubs, including Dawn, bowed their heads in unison, recognizing a power far greater than their own. "I am Celestia," the being announced, its voice resonating in their very souls. "I was one of the last luminary to leave this realm, and I have watched over your family since before your birth, Aurora. Your cubs, all 6 of you," it said, including Dawn in its gesture, "are the circle of light we have awaited. But you must be trained, prepared for what is to come. The Dark One knows of your existence now, and it will send far worse than shadow wolves to destroy you." The being of light knelt down beside Dawn, touching the child's forehead with a finger of pure radiance. Symbols similar to those on Lumen's shoulders appeared on Dawn's skin, glowing softly. "You have until the next solar eclipse, 3 months from now, to master your combined powers. Only then will you have a chance of facing the Dark One and restoring balance to all realms." Aurora looked at her cubs, 5 unique souls, each now marked by destiny in their own way. The weight of this responsibility should have terrified her, but instead she felt a deep sense of rightness. These were her children, whether born of flesh or light, and she would face any challenge to protect them and help them fulfill their purpose. As the first rays of dawn pierced the winter sky, Celestia began teaching Aurora's family about their newfound powers. The luminous being created a protective barrier of light around the cave entrance, explaining that it would hide them from the Dark One's servants while they trained. Inside this sanctuary, time seemed to flow differently. Each moment stretched with purpose and possibility. Dawn, the luminous child, was growing at an extraordinary rate. Within days, they could walk and communicate through a combination of light patterns and emotional projections that the bears could somehow understand. The 4 bear cubs, whom Aurora had named Storm, River, Frost, and Echo, were also developing far faster than normal bear cubs, their bodies and minds enhanced by their connection to their celestial sibling. "The bond you share is unique in all the realms," Celestia explained one morning, watching as Dawn taught the cubs to create shields of light around themselves. "Each of you represents a different aspect of the natural world, strengthened by your connection to the light." The being of radiance moved among them, touching each cub in turn. "Storm, you carry the power of the sky and wind. River, yours is the strength of flowing water and adaptation. Frost, you hold the essence of ice and endurance. And Echo, You possess the gift of sound and harmony." Aurora watched with pride as her cubs practiced their abilities. Storm could now create small whirlwinds of light that could deflect shadow energy. River learned to flow like water through solid objects when wrapped in dawn's light. Frost developed the ability to freeze shadows solid, making them brittle enough to shatter. Echo discovered they could amplify dawn's power through harmonic roars that could dispel darkness. But their training was interrupted one stormy evening when a new threat emerged. The barrier around the cave entrance flickered with warning pulses of light, and Lumen, who had been patrolling the perimeter, rushed inside. "They're coming," the guardian bear announced grimly. "The Dark One has sent its shadow stalkers." Celestia's form brightened with concern. "Shadow stalkers are far more dangerous than shadow wolves," they explained quickly. "They can corrupt living creatures, turning them into servants of darkness. If even one of you falls to their influence, the circle will be broken." The cave trembled as massive forms materialized from the darkness outside. Creatures that seemed to be made of living night, their bodies a constantly shifting mass of tentacles and claws. Unlike the shadow wolves, these beings moved with terrifying intelligence, probing the light barrier for weaknesses. "Remember what we practiced," Celestia instructed, their voice steady despite the growing danger. "The circle draws its strength from your unity. Together, you are far stronger than apart." Dawn moved to the center of the cave, their small form glowing brighter than ever before. The 4 bear cubs took their positions around their sibling, forming a perfect circle. Aurora and Lumen stood guard, ready to protect the young ones if the barrier failed. The first shadow stalker breached the light barrier with a sound like tearing reality. Its dark tentacles reached for River, trying to corrupt the young bear's pure heart. But Storm reacted instantly, creating a cyclone of light that deflected the shadowy appendages. Frost followed up by freezing the exposed tentacles, while Echo's harmonious roar shattered them into countless dark shards. More shadow stalkers poured through the weakening barrier, their forms merging together into a massive wave of darkness that threatened to engulf the entire cave. Dawn's eyes began to glow with an intense golden light, and they raised their small hands toward the ceiling. Streams of pure radiance flowed from them to each of the cubs, connecting them all in a web of light. What happened next would be remembered in bear legends for generations to come. The 4 cubs began to transform, their bodies growing to adult size within moments, their fur blazing with celestial fire. Storm's coat crackled with lightning made of light. River's fur flowed like liquid starlight. Frost's body emanated crystals of frozen radiance. Echo's form vibrated with visible waves of harmonic energy. Together, they released their combined power in a blast that turned night into day. The shadow stalkers shrieked in voices that shook the mountains, their corrupted forms unable to withstand the pure force of the circle's unity. The wave of darkness was pushed back, disintegrating into harmless shadows that fled into the night. But the victory came at a cost. As the light faded, the cubs returned to their normal size, exhausted by their first major display of power. Dawn swayed on their feet, their usual bright glow dimmed to a faint shimmer. Aurora rushed to gather her children close, licking their faces and checking for any signs of corruption. "That was remarkable," Celestia said softly, moving to examine each of the young ones. "But it was also dangerous. You tapped into powers you're not yet ready to fully control. The Dark One will have felt this display of light magic. We must move to a safer location to continue your training." Lumen nodded in agreement. "There is an ancient temple deep in the Crystal Mountains," the guardian bear suggested. "It was built by the Luminari before they left our realm." Its walls are inscribed with their knowledge and power. If anywhere is safe for us to continue preparing for the final confrontation, it's there. Aurora looked at her tired cubs, now sleeping peacefully in a pile, their fur still occasionally flickering with residual light. Dawn lay in the center of their group, one hand resting on each sibling's head, their shared dreams visible as soft auroras dancing above them. The sight filled her with both love and fear. Love for these extraordinary children who had been entrusted to her care, and fear for the dangerous path that lay ahead of them. "The journey to the Crystal Mountains will take 3 days," Lumine answered, their voice heavy with concern. "Through the Valley of Whispers and across the Mirror Lakes. Each path holds its own dangers, and the Dark One's influence grows stronger with each passing hour." They set out as the moon reached its peak, using its silver light to guide their way. Dawn created a subtle dome of luminescence around the group that bent light around them, making them nearly invisible to unfriendly eyes. The cubs, though still tired from their earlier battle, moved with determined steps alongside their mother. The Valley of Whispers lived up to its name. As they descended into its depths, voices seemed to emerge from every shadow, some sweet and enticing, others dark and threatening. Aurora noticed her cubs drawing closer together, their fur bristling at the unseen speakers. "The whispers are echoes of ancient magic," Celestia explained, their form providing additional light in the darkness. "Some are memories of the time before the Dark One's corruption. Others are reflections of its growing power. Do not listen too closely to any single voice, or it may trap your mind in its story." But even as Celestia spoke these words of warning, River suddenly stopped, head tilted as if listening to something only they could hear. The young bear's eyes began to glaze over with a strange, silvery film. "Mother?" River whispered, but the voice that emerged was not their own. "Why did you abandon us, Mother, when the darkness came?" Dawn moved swiftly, pressing their glowing hand against River's forehead. Light pulsed between them, and River shook their head as if awakening from a dream. "The whispers," River said, shuddering. "They showed me the moment the luminary left this realm. So much pain, so much loss. That is why we must succeed." Dawn spoke for the first time, their voice like chimes in a gentle breeze. "To heal the wounds of the past and prevent new ones from forming." The other cubs gathered around their celestial sibling, drawing strength from Dawn's quiet confidence. As they reached the center of the valley, the whispers grew more insistent, weaving together into a tapestry of sound that made the very air vibrate. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet began to shift and change. What had appeared to be ordinary dirt and stone transformed into a vast mosaic of colored crystals, each one containing moving images. "The valley's heart," Lumine breathed in awe. "I thought it was just a legend. These crystals contain the true history of our world, recorded by the very earth itself." Dawn approached one of the larger crystals, their light connecting with the ancient stone. Images exploded around them in three-dimensional splendor, scenes from the past playing out in vivid detail. They watched as the first luminary emerged from the stars, bringing light and harmony to a world of primal chaos. They saw the rise of the Dark One, originally a beautiful being of balanced shadow who helped maintain the natural cycle of day and night. But then the images shifted, showing the moment everything changed. A great celestial event, an eclipse much like the one approaching, had weakened the barriers between realms. The Dark One, driven by an inexplicable hunger, had begun consuming the light itself, growing more powerful and corrupt with each passing moment. "Stop!" Aurora commanded, as she saw her cubs becoming overwhelmed by the flood of historical images. We need to keep moving. The eclipse draws closer, and we still have far to go. They pressed on through the valley, but the revelations from the crystal heart had changed something in their dynamic. The cubs moved with new purpose, understanding now the true weight of their destiny. Even Storm, usually the most playful of the siblings, maintained a focused demeanor. As they approached the valley's exit, they encountered their first real challenge of the journey. A massive wall of what appeared to be solid darkness blocked their path. Unlike the shadow creatures they had faced before, this barrier seemed to be made of pure void, a complete absence of light that hurt their eyes to look at. The Dark One's work, Celestia observed grimly. It has been busy while we trained, setting traps along the most likely paths to the temple. This barrier is designed to absorb light. Any attempt to break through with direct power will only make it stronger. Dawn studied the barrier thoughtfully, their golden eyes reflecting the void. Then we must not fight it directly, they said softly. The luminous child turned to their siblings. Remember what we learned about harmony and balance. Light is not always about brightness. Understanding dawned in the cubs' eyes. They formed their circle again, but this time, instead of channeling their power outward, they directed it inward. Dawn's glow dimmed to barely a flicker, and the cub's fur lost its luster. Even Celestia and Lumen reduced their natural radiance to almost nothing. As they dimmed their light, something remarkable happened. The wall of darkness began to lose its substance, becoming less solid and more permeable. The barrier feeds on opposition, Dawn explained. By refusing to fight it, we take away its strength. They passed through the weakened barrier like shadows themselves, their minimal light allowing them to slip between the very particles of darkness. On the other side, they found themselves at the shores of the Mirror Lakes, a vast expanse of water so still and perfect it seemed to reflect not just the sky, but other realms entirely. Aurora gathered her children close as they prepared for the next leg of their journey. The Mirror Lakes would present challenges of their own. The reflections here were known to come alive, showing travelers their deepest fears and most secret desires. But as she looked at her extraordinary family, she felt a surge of confidence. Together, they had already accomplished the impossible. Whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them as one. What they didn't notice, as they paused to rest by the lakeside, was a single drop of perfect darkness that had clung to Dawn's light during their passage through the barrier. It settled into the child's radiance like a seed, waiting for the right moment to grow. The Dark One's corruption had found its first foothold in the circle of light, and time was running out faster than any of them knew. The Mirror Lakes stretched before them like sheets of polished silver in the moonlight, their surface so still it was impossible to tell where water ended and sky began. Celestia led them along the shoreline, explaining that they would need to cross at the lake's narrowest point, a place known as the Reflection Pass. As they walked, Aurora noticed Dawn occasionally reaching up to touch their chest, as if bothered by something beneath their glowing skin. Each time this happened, the light around them flickered almost imperceptibly. The mother bear wanted to ask if something was wrong, but Dawn would quickly resume their normal radiance before she could voice her concerns. The Mirror Lakes are not what they appear, Lumine warned as they approached Reflection Pass. The waters here don't simply show reflections, they reveal truths that even we hide from ourselves. Some say the lakes are actually windows into other possible realities, showing what might have been or what could still be. Storm, always the boldest of the cubs, stepped closer to the water's edge. In the perfectly still surface, their reflection showed not a bear cub, but a massive creature of pure storm clouds and lightning, its power uncontrolled and destructive. Storm stumbled backward, shaken by the vision. "That is one possible future," Celestia said gently, placing a comforting hand on Storm's head. "But only one. The lakes show us our potential, both for greatness and for failure. We must learn from these visions without becoming trapped by them." Each of the cubs took turns looking at their reflections. River saw themselves as a being of flowing water, bringing life to barren lands but also capable of devastating floods. Frost's reflection showed a creature of ice that could either protect or entomb. Echo's image revealed a being of such powerful harmonies that their voice could either heal or shatter reality itself. When dawn approached the water's edge, something strange happened. Instead of a single reflection, the surface showed multiple images, each one flickering and changing rapidly. In one, dawn appeared as a being of pure, healing light. In another, they were a creature of shadow and flame. But most disturbing was the image that appeared between these extremes, a form that seemed to be torn between light and darkness, neither fully one nor the other. Aurora watched her luminous child stare into the water, their golden eyes wide with understanding and fear. The tiny spot of darkness within Dawn's light pulsed, growing ever so slightly, feeding on their moment of doubt. "We must cross here," Celestia announced, their voice carrying an edge of urgency. "But remember, the waters will try to trap you in their visions. You must keep moving no matter what you see. Link yourselves together and don't let go, no matter what happens." They formed a chain, with Lumini at the front and Aurora bringing up the rear. The cubs stayed in the middle, with the Dawn at the center of their group. As soon as they stepped onto the surface of the lake, which was solid enough to walk on, yet somehow still liquid, the visions began. The water beneath their feet transformed into windows to other times and places. Aurora saw herself in a normal bear's life, with ordinary cubs, free from the weight of destiny. The image pulled at her heart, tempting her with its simplicity. But then she heard one of her cubs whimper, and the sound snapped her back to reality. The crossing became increasingly difficult as the visions grew more intense and personal. The water showed them their greatest hopes and deepest fears, moments of potential triumph and devastating failure. Echo saw themselves failing to protect their siblings. River witnessed a future where they succumbed to the Dark One's corruption. Frost faced a vision of eternal winter that they had caused, but it was Dawn who faced the most challenging visions. The water beneath their feet churned with conflicting images, futures where they saved all the realms, others where they destroyed them, and still others where they became something neither light nor dark, but terrible in their power. The spot of darkness within them grew stronger with each step, feeding on their uncertainty. Halfway across the lake, the surface beneath them began to ripple and shift. Figures emerged from the water, reflections given form and substance. Each member of their group found themselves facing a mirror version of themselves, but these reflections represented their darkest possibilities. "Don't fight them," Celestia called out as Storm prepared to attack their mirror self. "They are part of you. Fighting them only makes them stronger." Dawn's mirror self was particularly disturbing, a being that flickered between light and shadow, its form unstable and its power chaotic. As they faced this possible version of themselves, the darkness within Dawn pulsed strongly enough that Aurora finally noticed it. A tiny spot of void nestled within her child's light. Before she could react to this discovery, the mirror beings began to sing. The sound was beautiful and terrible, a harmony that seemed to pull at their very souls. Several of the cubs swayed, their grip on each other loosening as the song tried to draw them into the lake's depths. But then Echo, drawing on their power over sound and harmony, began to sing back. Their voice carried all the love and connection they shared as a family, weaving together light and hope into a counter-melody that strengthened their bonds. One by one, the other cubs joined in, their voices creating a symphony of pure light that caused their mirror selves to dissolve back into the lake's surface. Dawn's voice, when they added it to the harmony, seemed to vibrate between light and shadow, affected by the darkness growing within them. But the love in their siblings' song surrounded them, temporarily pushing back against the corruption. Their mirror self was the last to fade, its flickering form dissolving with a sound like breaking glass. As they finally reached the far shore, Aurora pulled Dawn aside while the others collapsed in exhaustion. "My child," she said softly, "there is something wrong, isn't there? Something you haven't told us?" Dawn looked up at their mother with eyes that now held tiny flecks of shadow among the gold. "The barrier," they whispered. "When we passed through it, a piece of the void attached itself to my light. I can feel it growing, Mother. With each moment of doubt, with each fear, it gets stronger." Celestia and Lumen overheard this confession and quickly joined them. The being of light examined Dawn carefully, their radiance dimming with concern. "This is the Dark One's most insidious power," they explained. "It doesn't need to defeat the light directly. It only needs to plant a seed of darkness and let doubt and fear do the rest. We must reach the temple soon, before—" "Before what?" Aurora demanded, her maternal instincts flaring with protective fury. "Before the darkness reaches Dawn's core," Lumen finished grimly. "If that happens, the circle will not just be broken, it will be corrupted, and a corrupted circle of light would be more devastating than anything the Dark One could do alone." The revelation of Dawn's condition changed the atmosphere of their group dramatically. What had been a challenging journey now became a desperate race against time. They could only rest in brief moments, pushing their tired bodies forward through the darkening landscape. The crystal mountains loomed ahead, their peaks scratching the sky like ancient teeth, still several hours' journey away. Aurora refused to let Dawn walk anymore, carrying her luminous child on her back despite their protests. She could feel the fluctuations in Dawn's light, each pulse growing slightly weaker as the darkness spread within them. The other cubs surrounded their mother and sibling, their own light helping to stabilize Dawn's fading radiance. "The temple lies within the heart of the tallest peak," Lumine explained as they began the ascent. "It was built at a nexus point where the barriers between realms are naturally thin. The luminary used this connection to maintain balance across all worlds." The guardian bear's symbols glowed brighter as they climbed higher, responding to the ancient power that still lingered in these mountains. But the Dark One had prepared for their coming. As they climbed higher, the very mountains seemed to turn against them. Shadows deeper than night itself oozed from between the rocks, forming into creatures that were neither wolf nor stalker, but something far worse. These beings appeared to be made from crystallized darkness, their forms sharp and angular, moving with the sound of breaking glass. "Shadow crystals," Celestia warned, their light flaring defensively. "The Dark One has corrupted the mountain's natural crystals, turning them into weapons. Do not let them touch you. A single cut can seed darkness in your heart, just as Dawn was infected." The crystal creatures attacked with devastating coordination, their razor-sharp limbs slicing through the air. Storm created whirlwinds of light to deflect them, while river flowed like liquid light between their attacks, drawing them away from Dawn. Frost managed to freeze several in place, and Echo's harmonious roar shattered them into harmless shards. But for each creature they defeated, two more emerged from the shadows. The constant fighting was draining their energy, and Dawn's condition was deteriorating faster with each passing moment. The spot of darkness had grown into a web of shadow that spread through their light like cracks in glass. "There's something else," Dawn whispered to Aurora as they huddled behind a boulder during a brief respite from battle. "The darkness, it's showing me things. Memories that aren't mine but feel real. I see the Dark One as it once was, before the corruption. It was beautiful, Mother. It helped maintain the balance, kept the light from becoming too bright, too harsh. But something went wrong during an eclipse long ago, something that made it afraid of being overwhelmed by light." Before Dawn could continue, a massive tremor shook the mountain. Cracks appeared in the ground around them, and from these fissures rose a being that made the shadow crystals seem trivial in comparison. It was like a mountain had come alive, its form composed of corrupted crystal and living shadow, its voice the sound of avalanches and breaking stone. "I am Obsidian," it announced, each word sending shards of darkness flying through the air. "Once, I was the guardian of these peaks, keeping watch over the temple. But the Dark One showed me the truth, that light seeks to blind us all, to burn away the necessary darkness that gives shape and depth to existence." The corrupted guardian's presence was having a visible effect on Dawn. The darkness within them responded to Obsidian's power, spreading faster through their luminous form. Dawn cried out in pain, their light flickering dangerously. "The temple," Celestia said urgently. "We must get Dawn there now, before the darkness reaches their core. The ancient wards might be able to purify them, but only if we arrive in time." The being of light turned to face Obsidian. "I will hold it back. Lumen, guide them to the temple entrance." But Aurora's cubs had other ideas. The 4 bear cubs moved to form a circle around their mother and Dawn, their eyes glowing with determination. "We are the Circle of Light," Storm declared, their voice carrying the power of thunder. "We face our challenges together." What happened next demonstrated the true power of their bond. Each cub began to glow with unprecedented brightness, their light taking on physical form. Storm became a cyclone of pure radiance. River transformed into a flowing river of light. Frost manifested as a crystalline aurora, and Echo's form dissolved into visible sound waves of golden energy. Their transformed forms merged together, creating a pathway of pure light that spiraled up the mountainside, bypassing Obsidian's massive body and leading directly to an ancient archway carved into the peak, the temple entrance. Aurora didn't hesitate. She raced along the path of light, carrying Dawn while Celestia and Lumine provided cover. Obsidian roared in fury, its crystalline body expanding to try to block their path. But the cub's light path was untouchable, existing somehow between physical reality and pure energy. As Aurora ran, she could feel her cub's love and determination flowing through the light beneath her feet, supporting and guiding her. They reached the temple entrance just as Dawn let out another cry of pain. The darkness had spread to cover nearly half their form now, the battle between light and shadow visible beneath their skin. Ancient symbols carved into the temple arch began to glow in response to Dawn's presence, but whether they were reacting to the light or the darkness, Aurora couldn't tell. "Quickly," Lumine urged, following them to the entrance. "The temple's inner sanctum holds the pool of radiance. If anything can purify Dawn of the darkness, it will be those waters. But—" The guardian bear hesitated. "But what?" Aurora demanded, even as she rushed inside. "The pool exists in a place between realms," Celestia explained, their voice echoing in the ancient halls. "To reach it, Dawn must cross the Veil of Shadows, alone. In their current state, that journey could either save them or complete their corruption. Dawn looked up at Aurora with eyes that now swirled with equal parts gold and shadow. "I have to try, Mother," they whispered, "but I'm afraid. The darkness, it's not just corrupting me, it's showing me truths I don't want to see. What if the Dark One isn't completely wrong? What if too much light can be just as dangerous as too much darkness?" Behind them, they could hear Obsidian's massive form trying to force its way into the temple, and the sound of the bear cubs still fighting to hold it back. Time was running out, and Aurora faced the most difficult decision of her life. Let Dawn face this challenge alone, or risk everything by trying to find another way. The ancient temple halls seemed to pulse with their own inner light, responding to Dawn's presence. The walls were covered in intricate murals that told stories of the time when light and darkness existed in harmony. As they moved deeper into the temple, these images began to move and shift, as if awakening from a long slumber. "The temple remembers," Celestia explained, their voice filled with reverence. "It was here that the first covenant between light and shadow was formed, long before the Dark One's corruption began. The very stones hold the memory of that balance." Dawn watched the moving murals with intense fascination, their form now a striking contrast of light and shadow. The darkness within them had spread to cover nearly their entire left side, while their right side still glowed with their original radiance. The effect was both beautiful and terrifying, a physical manifestation of the war raging within them. Suddenly, Dawn spoke with a wisdom that seemed to come from somewhere beyond themselves. "The Dark One wasn't always wrong, was it? Even now, its fear has a seed of truth. Light without shadow becomes blinding, destructive. But shadow without light becomes a void, consuming everything. Neither can exist without the other." The group reached a vast circular chamber at the temple's heart. In its center, a swirling veil of darkness hung in the air like a living curtain, occasionally parting to reveal glimpses of a radiant pool beyond. The pool of radiance lay just on the other side, but reaching it meant passing through the very essence of shadow. The 4 bear cubs, who had maintained their light forms to hold back Obsidian, finally returned to their physical bodies, exhausted but determined to stay with their sibling. They gathered around Dawn, their fur still glowing faintly with residual power. "The veil of shadows is not just a barrier," Lumine explained gravely. "It is a test. To reach the pool of radiance, one must understand and accept the true nature of darkness, not as an enemy to be destroyed, but as a necessary part of existence itself." Dawn stood before the veil, their dual-toned form reflecting in its shifting surface. "I think I understand now," they said softly. "The Dark One's corruption didn't come from too much darkness. It came from refusing to accept the necessity of light. Just as the luminaries' retreat didn't come from too much light, it came from refusing to accept the necessity of darkness." Aurora felt her heart breaking as she watched her luminous child prepare to enter the veil alone. But before Dawn could step forward, something unexpected happened. The darkness within them suddenly pulsed with tremendous force, and Dawn collapsed to their knees with a cry of pain. In that moment of crisis, a new voice filled the chamber, ancient, powerful, and somehow familiar. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, speaking directly into their minds. "At last, someone begins to understand." The shadows in the chamber gathered and coalesced into a form that made even Celestia step back in awe. It was the Dark One itself, but not as the corrupted force they had feared. This manifestation appeared as it had in the beginning, a being of perfect shadow that gave depth and meaning to light, its form both beautiful and terrible in its necessity. I have waited centuries for one who could see the truth, the Dark One continued, its voice carrying both power and pain. The eclipse long ago did not corrupt me. It showed me a vision of a future where light would try to eliminate all darkness, destroying the very balance that gives existence its meaning. My fear of that future corrupted me, turned me from a guardian of necessary shadow into a creature of all-consuming void. Dawn managed to stand, their dual nature resonating with the Dark One's words. And now you spread that same fear to others, they said, their voice somehow blending light and shadow in perfect harmony, creating the very imbalance you sought to prevent. The Dark One's form shifted, showing moments from its long history, the beauty it once helped create, the harmony it once maintained, and the fear that had driven it to such destructive extremes. Yes, it acknowledged. I became what I feared most, a force of pure destruction rather than necessary shadow. But in you, young one, I see a chance for something new. Neither blinding light nor consuming dark, but true balance. Celestia moved forward, their light pulsing with sudden understanding. The prophecy, they breathed. We all misunderstood. The circle of light was never meant to destroy darkness. It was meant to restore balance. The 4 bear cubs pressed closer to Dawn, their light merging with their siblings' unique radiance. As they did, something remarkable began to happen. The darkness within Dawn stopped spreading, and instead began to integrate with their light in a new way. Rather than fighting for dominance, the 2 forces started to dance together, creating patterns of incredible beauty and complexity. Aurora watched in amazement as her children's power combined in a way none of them had imagined possible. The bear cub's light merged with Dawn's balanced radiance, and together they began to glow with a light that cast no shadows. Not because it eliminated them, but because it existed in perfect harmony with darkness itself. The Dark One's form began to respond to this display of balance, its corrupted layers of void beginning to peel away, revealing more of its original, beautiful form. The choice lies before us all, it said, its voice growing clearer as its corruption receded. Continue this endless cycle of light fighting shadow, or find a new way forward. Dawn, child of both radiance and darkness. What do you choose? Dawn looked at their family, their mother who had loved them unconditionally, their siblings who had fought so fiercely to protect them, and the ancient beings who had guided their journey. Then they turned to face the veil of shadows, which now seemed less like a barrier and more like a doorway to understanding. I choose balance, Dawn declared, their voice carrying the weight of destiny. Not as a compromise between light and dark, but as the recognition that both are essential, both are beautiful, both are necessary. They took a step toward the veil, but this time they were not afraid. Will you help me restore what was lost? The Dark One's form shifted again, and for a brief moment they all saw it as it truly was. Not a monster of corruption, but a guardian of necessary darkness that had lost its way through fear. Together, it agreed, its voice carrying hope for the first time in centuries. The chamber filled with a new kind of power, as Dawn and the Dark One faced the veil of shadows together. The ancient murals on the walls began to shine with unprecedented clarity, showing not just the history they had always depicted, but the future that might be possible. Images of light and shadow dancing in harmony, creating worlds of incredible beauty and complexity, sparkled across the temple walls. Celestia stepped forward, their pure light form beginning to change as understanding dawned. For too long, we Luminari believed that perfect light was the answer, they admitted. We forgot that it was the dance between light and shadow that gave birth to all creation. Our retreat from this realm wasn't just abandonment, It was a failure to understand this essential truth. Aurora watched in amazement as her cubs, seemingly guided by instinct, began to move in a complex pattern around Dawn. Storm's weather powers created a swirling atmosphere of clouds and gentle lightning. Rivers, flowing energy, carved channels of light through the air. Frost's crystalline power formed beautiful structures that caught and reflected both light and shadow. Echo's harmonies wove everything together in a symphony of balance. "The eclipse approaches," Lumine announced, their symbols pulsing with increasing urgency. But perhaps it is not something to fear. If the last eclipse created imbalance through fear, maybe this eclipse can restore balance through understanding. Dawn nodded, their dual nature now perfectly stabilized, not fighting itself, but working in harmony. The pool of radiance was never meant to purify darkness from light, they realized aloud. It was meant to teach us how they dance together. With newfound confidence, Dawn stepped toward the veil of shadows, which now seemed to pulse in rhythm with their own balanced energy. But before they could enter, a tremendous crash shook the temple. Obsidian had finally broken through, its corrupted crystalline form filling the entrance to the chamber. However, something was different about the ancient guardian. Seeing the Dark One in its original form seemed to awaken memories in the corrupted being. I remember," Obsidian's voice rumbled, less harsh than before. "I was meant to guard the balance, not just the light. The crystals in these mountains, they were meant to reflect both, to teach visitors about harmony." Its massive form began to crack, not with destruction, but with transformation. The Dark One turned its attention to its corrupted servant. "Fear corrupted me, and through me it corrupted you, old friend. But witness now the truth we forgot." The ancient being of shadow extended its power toward Obsidian, not to destroy, but to remind. Dawn understood instinctively what needed to be done. They reached out with their own balanced power, combining it with the Dark One's influence. Light and shadow worked together, seeping into Obsidian's crystalline form, not fighting the corruption but transforming it into something new. Obsidian's body began to change, the pure darkness of corruption giving way to a crystalline form that contained both light and shadow in perfect balance. The Guardian's eyes cleared, showing the same swirling patterns of harmony that now marked Dawn's form. "The eclipse is nearly upon us," Celestia announced, their light pulsing with the approaching alignment. "Whatever we're going to do, it must be done soon. Once the alignment is complete, the barriers between realms will be at their thinnest." Dawn looked at their family, Aurora, whose love had transcended the boundaries of ordinary understanding. Their siblings, who had grown far beyond what anyone thought possible, and the ancient beings around them, who had learned to see past their own prejudices and fears. "We need to show everyone the truth," Dawn declared, "not just in this realm, but in all realms. The eclipse isn't an ending. It's an opportunity for a new beginning." The Dark One's form shifted, revealing more of its original beauty. "The pool of radiance connects to all realms," it explained. "If we can channel our combined power through it during the eclipse, we might be able to restore balance everywhere. But the amount of energy required." It hesitated, looking at Dawn with concern. "Would be too much for any one being to channel," Lumine finished. "Even attempting it could tear them apart at the most fundamental level." "Then we do it together," Storm declared, stepping forward. The other cubs joined them, their light steady and sure. "The circle was never meant to be just Dawn," River added, understanding dawning in their eyes. "It was meant to be all of us, including the darkness within us." Aurora felt fear grip her heart. What exactly are you suggesting? The eclipse will create a gateway between all realms, Frost explained, their voice carrying growing excitement. If we combine our powers, not just light and dark, but all the elements we represent, we could create a new kind of harmony, Echo finished, one that doesn't just restore balance, but maintains it. Dawn smiled at their siblings, love and pride shining in their dual-toned eyes. It would be dangerous, they warned. We would be channeling power that hasn't been united since the beginning of creation itself, but we wouldn't be doing it alone, the Dark One added, its form shifting thoughtfully. If I lend my original power, not the corruption, but the true darkness that helps define light itself, Celestia's form brightened with sudden hope. And if I channel the pure light of the luminary, not to dominate, but to dance with the darkness, Obsidian's newly balanced form crystallized with purpose. The mountain itself could serve as a conduit, using all its ancient crystals to help distribute the power safely. The eclipse's shadow began to darken the temple as the alignment drew closer. Aurora looked at her children, all of her children, including Dawn, and saw not just the cubs she had raised, but the instruments of universal change they had become. The choice before them was monumental. Risk everything on this one chance to restore true balance, or let the realms continue their slow descent into chaos. As the eclipse's shadow crept across the land, the temple itself began to transform. The ancient stones resonated with power, their crystalline structures awakening after centuries of dormancy. The murals on the walls were now moving so quickly they became a blur of light and shadow, telling 1,000 stories at once. Dawn stepped through the veil of shadows first, their balanced form creating a path that others could follow. The Dark One moved alongside them, its ancient power harmonizing with Dawn's energy in ways that made the very air shimmer with possibility. One by one, the bear cubs followed, each bringing their unique gifts to what was about to become the most important moment in the history of all realms. The pool of radiance spread before them, but it was no longer simply a pool of light. In the approaching eclipse, its surface had become a mirror that reflected all realities at once. In its depths, they could see countless worlds and realms, some dominated by harsh light, others consumed by empty darkness, all of them crying out for balance. "The alignment begins," Celestia announced, their form growing brighter as the eclipse progressed. "We must act now, while the barriers are thinnest." The being of light moved to one side of the pool, while the Dark One took position on the opposite side, their powers already beginning to intermingle in the space between them. Aurora watched with a mother's mix of pride and fear as her cubs took their positions around the pool. Storm stood at the northern point, their weather powers creating a swirling atmosphere of potential energy. River claimed the eastern position, their liquid light flowing like cosmic streams through the air. Frost took the southern point, their crystalline energy forming intricate patterns of frozen light and shadow. Echo moved to the western edge, their harmonious power already beginning to weave everything together. Dawn stood in the center of it all, their balanced form hovering just above the pool's surface. The darkness and light within them had completely integrated now, creating something entirely new, not a compromise between opposites, but a perfect synthesis of complementary forces. "Remember," the Dark One's voice echoed through the chamber, "we're not trying to eliminate either light or shadow. We're teaching them to dance together again, as they did at the beginning of all things." Obsidian's massive crystalline form encircled the entire chamber, its newly balanced structure ready to help channel and distribute the enormous energies they were about to unleash. The ancient guardian's voice rumbled like distant thunder. The mountains remember this dance. Every crystal, every stone recalls the time when light and shadow moved as one. The eclipse reached its first critical point, and dawn began to glow with unprecedented power. The light and shadow within them spiraled outward, touching the pool's surface and creating ripples that spread across all realities. The bear cubs activated their powers simultaneously, each adding their unique energy to the building harmony. Storm's contribution manifested as countless tiny lightning bolts that carried messages of change between realms. River's power flowed like liquid starlight, dissolving the barriers that had kept light and shadow apart for so long. Frost's energy created beautiful, crystalline bridges between worlds, allowing balance to flow from one reality to another. Echo's harmonies wove everything together, their voice carrying the story of unity to every corner of existence. The Dark One released its original power, not the corrupted force it had become, but the pure shadow that gave depth and meaning to light. At the same time, Celestia channeled the undiluted radiance of the Luminarii, not as a dominant force, but as an equal partner in creation's dance. Aurora felt tears streaming down her face as she watched her children participate in this cosmic reformation. Through the pool of radiance, she could see the changes rippling across all realms. Darkness and light beginning to remember their ancient partnership, fear giving way to understanding, balance returning to worlds long torn apart by extremes. But the power required was immense, and the strain began to show. Dawn's form flickered dangerously as they channeled more and more energy. The bear cub's light began to falter, their young bodies struggling to contain the cosmic forces flowing through them. Even the Dark One and Celestia showed signs of strain, their ancient powers tested by this unprecedented effort. "Something's wrong," Lumini called out, their symbols flashing in warning. "The energy flow isn't stable. There's too much power, too quickly. It's overwhelming the conduits." Aurora saw her children struggling and did what any mother would do. She leaped forward to help them. Without fully understanding how, she found herself adding her own power to the mix. Her maternal love, pure and unconditional, became a stabilizing force in the chaotic energy storm. Her action sparked a revelation. "Of course," Dawn exclaimed, their voice carrying through all realms at once. "It's not just about light and shadow or elements and harmony. It's about love, the force that transcends all boundaries, that accepts all parts of existence, that sees beauty in both light and dark." The realization transformed their efforts. Rather than trying to force balance through power alone, they began to weave love through every connection, every bridge between realms. Aurora's maternal love became the template, showing how acceptance and understanding could unite seemingly opposing forces. Storm thought of their love for wild, chaotic weather and gentle breezes alike. River recalled their love of both rushing rapids and still pools. Frost embraced their love of sharp ice crystals and soft snowflakes. Echo filled their harmonies with love for both loud crashes and quiet whispers. The Dark One remembered its original love for giving definition to light, for creating the contrast that made beauty possible. Celestia recalled their love for the shadows that made their radiance meaningful. Even Obsidian's crystals resonated with love for both the clarity of light and the mystery of darkness. The eclipse reached its peak, and for a moment all realms held their breath. Through the pool of radiance, they could see every world, every reality, every possibility poised on the edge of transformation. Dawn hovered at the center of it all, their form now a perfect blend of light and shadow, each enhancing the other's beauty. In that crystalline moment of perfect eclipse, something miraculous began to happen. The pool of radiance no longer simply reflected other realms. It began to sing. The sound was unlike anything any of them had ever heard, a harmony of light and shadow that Echo instantly recognized as the universe's original song. Their voice joined with it instinctively, adding layers of complexity and beauty to the cosmic melody. Through the pool's surface, they watched in awe as the transformation spread across all realms. In worlds long lost to darkness, pinpoints of light began to emerge, not to fight the shadows but to dance with them. In realms burned by too much light, gentle shadows began to form, bringing depth and coolness to the scorched landscapes. Each world found its own unique balance, its own perfect dance between radiance and darkness. The Dark One's ancient fear finally dissolved completely as it witnessed the beauty of true harmony. Its form shifted one final time, becoming what it was always meant to be, a magnificent guardian of sacred darkness that gave light its meaning. Celestia, too, underwent a transformation, their pure radiance learning to value and incorporate shadow, becoming richer and more complex in the process. But the most remarkable changes were happening to Dawn and the bear cubs. As the eclipse reached its absolute peak, their forms began to transcend their physical limitations. Storm's body became a swirling constellation of lightning and gentle darkness. River transformed into a flowing stream of liquid starlight bordered by soft shadows. Frost's form crystallized into a structure of light and shadow, so beautiful it brought tears to Aurora's eyes. Echo's very being became visible sound waves, alternating between brightness and shade in perfect rhythm. Dawn, at the center of it all, achieved something unprecedented in the history of all realms. Their form became a living embodiment of balance itself, neither light nor shadow, but something far more profound, a being that could shift between all states of existence, understanding and celebrating each one's unique beauty. Aurora watched in amazement as her children evolved beyond anything she could have imagined, yet somehow remained essentially themselves. Their love for each other and for her only grew stronger with their transformation. She could feel their joy, their wonder, and their deep contentment as they helped restore balance to all of creation. The power flowing through the pool of radiance reached levels that should have been impossible to contain, but the love binding them all together kept it stable. Obsidian's crystalline form began to multiply and spread, creating a vast network of balanced crystals that extended far beyond the temple, deep into the mountains, and eventually throughout the entire world. Each crystal served as both an anchor for the new harmony and a window through which the beauty of balance could be witnessed. As the eclipse began to wane, the changes became permanent, settling into the fabric of reality itself. The barriers between realms remained, but they were no longer walls of separation. Instead, they became permeable membranes that allowed light and shadow to flow naturally between worlds, maintaining dynamic balance everywhere. The Dark One turned to Dawn and the cubs, its voice filled with emotion. "You have done more than restore balance," it said softly. "You have created something entirely new, a way for light and shadow to grow together, to evolve together, to create together. This is beyond anything we imagined possible in the ancient days." Celestia moved to stand beside their former adversary, their combined radiance and darkness creating patterns of breathtaking beauty. "The circle of light has become something far greater," they observed. "You are now the circle of harmony, guardians not just of light or darkness, but of the eternal dance between them." Dawn floated down to nuzzle against Aurora's fur, their transformed being still capable of expressing the simple love of a child for their mother. The other cubs gathered around them, their new forms shifting and swirling with joy and affection. though they had become cosmic forces of harmony, they were still her children, still the family that had begun this journey together in a simple cave during the depths of winter. "What happens now?" Aurora asked, looking at her transformed family with a mixture of pride and wonder. "Now," Dawn replied, their voice carrying echoes of every realm they had helped to balance, "we learn to dance. Every world, every being, every particle of existence must learn the steps of this new harmony. Some will learn quickly, others slowly, but the dance itself is now part of the very fabric of reality." The bear cubs demonstrated what Dawn meant, their transformed bodies moving in an intricate pattern around their mother. Storm created gentle rain that fell upward, each drop containing perfect spheres of light and shadow. River's liquid starlight flowed in impossible patterns, creating landscapes of dynamic balance wherever it touched. Frost's crystals grew and shifted, each facet telling stories of harmony through reflected light and shadow. Echo's harmonies gave voice to the joy of existence itself, celebrating both the bright notes and the quiet spaces between them. Lumen, watching from the temple's entrance, noticed something extraordinary beginning to happen in the forest below. The balance that had been restored wasn't simply a static state. It was alive, growing, evolving. Plants were developing new patterns that incorporated both light and shadow in their very structure. Animals were beginning to understand and use both aspects of reality. Even the mountains themselves were changing. Obsidian's crystalline network allowing them to shift between states of radiance and darkness as naturally as breathing. "You've given all of creation a gift," the guardian bear observed, their symbols now pulsing with both light and shadow. Not just balance, but the ability to understand and celebrate both aspects of existence. This is the beginning of a new age. Aurora felt a profound truth in those words. Looking at her transformed children, she understood that they would be needed more than ever in this new age. Not as warriors fighting against darkness or champions of blinding light, but as teachers, guides, and living examples of the harmony that was possible when love overcame fear. As the first day of the new age dawned, the world began to demonstrate just how profound the changes were. The sunrise itself had transformed, no longer simply a burst of light pushing away darkness, but a gorgeous interplay of both forces. Dawn's light streamed through shadow in ways that created new colors previously unseen in any realm, while darkness danced with the growing radiance to create depths and patterns of breathtaking complexity. Aurora watched in amazement as the forest below the temple came alive with new forms of life. Plants that had once grown only in sunlight now developed varieties that thrived in shadow, their leaves patterned with swirling designs of light and dark. Flowers bloomed that could change their petals from radiant to shadowed, adapting to maintain perfect harmony with their surroundings. Even the ancient trees had begun to evolve, their bark developing crystalline properties that allowed them to channel and balance both forces. The transformed bear cubs took to their new roles with natural grace. Storm discovered they could create weather patterns that brought both nurturing light and necessary shadow to drought-stricken realms. River learned to flow between worlds, carrying the message of harmony through streams that connected different planes of existence. Frost developed the ability to create ice crystals that could store and release light and shadow as needed, helping regions maintain balance through all seasons. Echo's songs became teaching tools, their harmonies helping others understand the complex dance of forces that now governed existence. Dawn, however, had become something beyond even their siblings' remarkable transformations. As the first being to achieve perfect synthesis of light and shadow, they could move freely between all states of existence. One moment, they would be a brilliant creature of pure light, the next a being of living shadow, and then something that was both and neither, a constant reminder that these forces were not opposites to be reconciled, but complementary aspects of a greater whole. The balance we've created isn't static, Dawn explained to their mother as they watched new life forms emerge in the valley below. It's a living, breathing thing that must be nurtured and guided. Each realm, each being, must find its own unique expression of harmony. The Dark One, now restored to its original purpose, worked alongside Celestia to establish guidelines for this new existence. Together they created what became known as the Codex of Harmony, a living document written in light and shadow that outlined the principles of balance while acknowledging that each world would interpret and implement them differently. The challenge, Celestia observed, will be helping beings understand that balance doesn't mean sameness. Some worlds will naturally lean more toward shadow, others toward light, but now they can do so without falling into extremes. The transformed family discovered that their teaching roles took many forms. In one realm, they helped creatures of pure light learn to incorporate and appreciate darkness, showing them how shadows gave their radiance greater meaning and beauty. In another, they guided shadow beings in embracing points of light within themselves, demonstrating how this made their darkness richer and more profound. Lumen and Obsidian, working together, began establishing harmony points throughout all realms. Special locations where the balance between light and shadow was particularly clear and beautiful. These places became natural gathering spots for beings seeking to understand the new way of existence. The crystal network they created served as both a physical manifestation of balance and a communication system connecting all worlds. But perhaps the most beautiful transformations were the small, personal ones that Aurora witnessed every day. A shadow wolf cub learning to play with a creature of light, their energies mixing in joyful swirls. A tree of pure radiance offering shelter to beings of darkness, its light soft and welcoming, rather than harsh and excluding. Beings that had once been bitter enemies now working together to create art that celebrated both aspects of existence. Dawn and their siblings discovered they could help facilitate these personal transformations through what became known as the Harmony Touch. By connecting with another being, they could temporarily share their perfect balance, giving others a glimpse of how it felt to exist in complete harmony with all aspects of reality. These experiences often led to profound personal revelations and lasting changes in how beings perceived themselves and others. Aurora found her own role in this new age, becoming known as the Mother of Harmony. Her unconditional love and acceptance became a model for how to embrace all aspects of existence. Other mother bears sought her out, asking how to raise cubs in this new balanced world. She taught them what she had learned, that love was the force that could bridge any divide, heal any rift, and find beauty in all forms of existence. The Dark One, watching all of this unfold, spoke to Aurora one evening as she sat outside the temple. "Your love did more than save your children," it said, its form shifting between shadows that were no longer frightening but fascinating. It showed all of creation a new way forward. Fear taught me to reject light, just as fear taught others to reject darkness. But love taught us to embrace both, to see the beauty in all aspects of existence. Celestia added their own observation, their radiance now perfectly complemented by elegant shadows. The prophecy spoke of the circle of light, but what you and your children created is the circle of love, a force that doesn't just balance light and shadow, but celebrates their eternal dance. As if to demonstrate this truth, Dawn and the cubs chose that moment to perform what had become known as the Harmony Dance. Storm created a gentle cyclone that carried drops of liquid light and shadow. River flowed through the air in streams of alternating radiance and darkness. Frost formed crystals that caught and released both the forces in rhythmic pulses. Echo's voice provided a melody that made the very concept of harmony visible in the air. And Dawn, moving through the center of their siblings' dance, demonstrated the ultimate truth of their new existence, that light and shadow were not opposing forces to be balanced, but partners in an eternal dance of creation. Their form shifted fluidly between states, each transformation revealing new beauty, new possibilities, new ways of being. The eclipse that had triggered all these changes had long since passed, but its effects continued to ripple through all realms. The fear that had driven light and shadow apart had been replaced by understanding, acceptance, and love. The universe itself had remembered its original nature, not as a battlefield between opposing forces, but as a grand dance of complementary energies, each making the other more beautiful, more meaningful, more complete. As seasons turned and the new age matured, the transformed family discovered that their roles continued to evolve in unexpected and beautiful ways. The harmony they had helped establish wasn't a final state, but a living, growing thing that revealed new depths with each passing day. The temple that had once been their sanctuary became known as the Heart of Harmony, a place where beings from all realms could come to learn about the dance between light and shadow. Dawn's unique nature as the first being of perfect synthesis made them particularly suited to helping others through difficult transformations. They developed the ability to see the specific imbalances that troubled different beings and guide them toward their own unique forms of harmony. Sometimes this meant helping creatures of light understand the beauty of their own shadows. Other times showing beings of darkness how to embrace the sparks of light within themselves. The bear cub's powers continued to grow in complexity and subtlety. Storm learned to create weather patterns that could heal damaged realms, using the perfect balance of light and shadow to restore wastelands to vibrant life. River discovered they could flow through the memories of entire worlds, helping heal ancient wounds that had caused imbalances in the first place. Frost developed the ability to create time crystals that could show beings their own potential futures in balance, helping them make choices that promoted harmony. Echo's songs became so sophisticated they could restructure reality itself, though they used this power only to heal and harmonize, never to dominate or control. Aurora found that her role as Mother of Harmony extended far beyond teaching other bears. Beings from across all realms sought her wisdom about love, growth, and acceptance. She shared stories of how she had loved Dawn from the first moment, despite their differences, and how that love had helped create the possibility of universal harmony. Her den in the temple became a place where even the most troubled beings could find comfort and guidance. Love, she would often say, is the force that allows us to see beauty in all forms of existence. It's what gives us the courage to embrace change and the wisdom to celebrate differences. The Dark One and Celestia, working together, discovered that their combined presence could heal rifts between realms that had existed since the beginning of time. They traveled to places where reality itself had been torn by ancient conflicts, using their unified power to restore connections that had been lost for eons. Each healed rift revealed new aspects of existence that enriched all realms. One particularly remarkable discovery came when they found that certain beings could exist simultaneously in states of light and shadow, not just alternating between them as Dawn did, but maintaining multiple states at once. This led to the emergence of entirely new forms of life that embodied harmony in previously unimaginable ways. Lumen and Obsidian's crystal network evolved into what became known as the Harmony Web, a living matrix of balanced energy that connected all realms. Through this network, beings could share experiences and understanding across dimensional boundaries. The web became both a communication system and a stabilizing force, helping maintain the delicate dance of energies that kept reality in balance. But perhaps the most profound changes were the ones that occurred in the everyday lives of ordinary beings. Children born into this new age grew up understanding naturally what their ancestors had struggled to comprehend. That light and shadow were not opponents but partners in the dance of existence. They developed games that celebrated both forces, created art that explored their infinite combinations, and formed friendships that transcended old boundaries of energy and form. Dawn and their siblings took particular joy in working with these young ones, teaching them what they called the little dances, simple movements and energetic exercises that helped develop harmony awareness from an early age. These practices spread throughout all realms, adapted by each culture and species to fit their own needs and understanding. The transformed family also discovered that their influence had unexpected effects on the very structure of reality. In places where they spent significant time, new forms of matter began to emerge, substances that were neither light nor shadow, but something more complex and beautiful. These materials became known as harmony matter, and they proved invaluable in healing damaged realms and creating new forms of balanced technology. Aurora watched all of this with a mother's pride and wisdom, understanding that the miracle that had begun in her den during that winter night had grown into something far beyond what anyone could have imagined. Her family had not just changed the universe, they had helped it remember its true nature and expand into new possibilities. One evening, as they gathered at the Heart of Harmony to celebrate the anniversary of the Great Transformation, Dawn shared a revelation that brought tears to everyone's eyes. "What we created isn't just a new way of existing," they said, their form shifting through beautiful combinations of light and shadow. "It's the universe remembering how to love itself completely. Every bright moment, every dark corner, every shade and gradation in between. We didn't just restore balance, we restored the cosmos' ability to celebrate all aspects of its own being." The bear cubs demonstrated this truth with a new form of the harmony dance, more complex and beautiful than ever before. Storm created atmospheric phenomena that played with light and shadow in ways that made Aurora Borealis look simple. River flowed through multiple dimensions at once, their liquid light shadow creating patterns that told stories of universal harmony. Frost formed crystals that existed in several states simultaneously, each facet reflecting a different aspect of balanced reality. Echo's voice wove through it all, turning abstract concepts of harmony into visible, tangible beauty. The Dark One, watching this display, turned to Aurora with an expression of profound gratitude. "Your love for Dawn showed us all a truth we had forgotten," it said. "That the greatest power in existence isn't light or shadow, but the love that allows us to embrace both. You taught us that true harmony isn't about controlling or balancing forces, it's about loving them for what they are and celebrating how they dance together." Celestia added their own observation, their form now a perfect complement to the Dark One's presence. "The prophecy spoke of restoring balance, but what you and your family achieved was something far greater. You showed us that balance isn't an end state to be achieved, but a dynamic dance to be lived and loved. Each day brings new steps, new combinations, new ways of moving between light and shadow." As if to demonstrate this truth, Dawn began to glow with a new kind of radiance, not the pure light of their original form, nor the perfect balance they had achieved, but something even more evolved. Their being seemed to contain infinite possibilities of light and shadow, each one beautiful, each one necessary, each one loved. The other cubs responded to this display with their own evolutionary leaps, their powers combining in ways that created new dimensions of harmony. As the cosmos continued to evolve under the influence of the new harmony, remarkable changes began occurring at every level of existence. The transformed family discovered that their influence had catalyzed an ongoing process of cosmic evolution that none of them, not even the ancient beings, had anticipated. The universe itself seemed to be awakening to new possibilities, exploring ways of existing that transcended the original concepts of light and shadow. In the deepest reaches of space, entire galaxies began to develop consciousness, their spiraling arms becoming aware of the dance between starlight and cosmic darkness. New forms of celestial phenomena emerged, nebulae that could think, black holes that sang harmonious songs into the void, and star clusters that wove light and shadow into living tapestries of creation. Dawn, watching these cosmic changes unfold, developed an even deeper understanding of their unique role. They discovered that they could now communicate directly with these awakened cosmic entities, serving as a bridge between the minute and the massive. Through these conversations, they learned that the harmony they had helped establish was actually the universe's original state. Not just a balance between light and shadow, but a celebration of all possible ways of being. The bear cubs found their powers evolving to match this deeper understanding. Storm learned to create weather patterns that could affect the emotional fabric of reality itself, using rain made of liquid light to nurture joy and winds of gentle shadow to soothe pain. River discovered they could flow through the quantum fabric of existence, helping particles and waves find their own unique forms of harmony. Frost developed the ability to create crystals that could store and process infinite combinations of light and shadow, becoming living computers that helped maintain the cosmic dance. Echo's songs grew so profound they could be heard across multiple dimensions, teaching the music of harmony to beings that had never known sound. Aurora watched her children's evolution with deepening wonder, but also noticed something remarkable happening to herself. Her maternal love, which had been the catalyst for so much change, began to affect reality in its own unique way. Wherever she went, beings found themselves better able to understand and accept all aspects of themselves. Her presence acted as a kind of harmony amplifier, helping others discover their own capacity for balance and love. Your gift, the Dark One explained to her, is helping others see that harmony isn't something external to be achieved, but something internal to be discovered. You show them that they already contain all the elements needed for balance. They just need to love each aspect of themselves as you loved Dawn from the first moment. Celestia, whose own nature had continued to evolve, added their perspective. What we're witnessing isn't just a transformation of reality. It's reality remembering how to dream. Every new form of harmony that emerges is the universe imagining new ways to celebrate its own existence. The harmony web that Lumine and Obsidian had established evolved into something they called the Cosmic Consciousness Network. This living matrix of crystalline awareness connected not just different realms, but different levels of reality. Through this network, a child's laughter could bring joy to a galaxy, and a star's song could comfort a grieving heart. The boundaries between microcosm and macrocosm became permeable, allowing harmony to flow freely between all scales of existence. Dawn and their siblings discovered they could use this network to conduct what they called harmony symphonies, massive, coordinated demonstrations of balance that involved beings from quantum to cosmic scales. During these events, electrons would dance with stars, mountains would sing with microbes, and all of reality would pulse with the joy of unified existence. The Dark One and Celestia, continuing their work together, made a discovery that changed their understanding of harmony itself. They found that in the spaces between light and shadow, in the moments of transition from one state to another, entirely new forms of existence were constantly being born. These interim realities weren't just mixtures of light and shadow, but entirely new expressions of being that transcended both. We thought harmony was about finding balance between two forces, the Dark One mused, its form shifting through beautiful new patterns of shadow. But it's actually about discovering that there are infinite ways to exist, infinite forms of beauty, infinite expressions of cosmic joy. Aurora's den in the heart of harmony became known as the womb of possibility, a place where new forms of existence were constantly emerging. Beings would enter seeking balance and leave transformed, having discovered aspects of themselves they never knew existed. The love that had begun with a mother bear accepting her unusual child had become a force for infinite cosmic creativity. The young ones born into this evolved reality developed abilities that astounded even Dawn. They could perceive and exist in multiple states simultaneously, their consciousness flowing naturally between different levels of reality. They didn't need to learn harmony. They were born understanding that all forms of existence were equally valid and beautiful. One day, as the transformed family gathered to celebrate another milestone in cosmic evolution, Dawn shared a profound realization. What we started wasn't just a new chapter in the universe's story. It was the universe learning how to write new stories about itself. Every being, from the smallest quantum particle to the largest galactic cluster, is now both author and character in an endless tale of discovery and celebration. To demonstrate this truth, Dawn and their siblings performed what they called the Dance of Infinite Possibility. Storm created weather that existed in all possible states at once, each raindrop containing a universe of potential. River flowed through every level of reality simultaneously, their essence connecting quantum foam to cosmic web. Frost formed crystals that served as windows into infinite alternate harmonies, each facet showing a different way that existence could celebrate itself. Echo's voice became a chorus of all possible songs, each note carrying the joy of infinite discovery. Aurora, watching her children perform this cosmic celebration, felt tears of joy streaming down her face. The simple act of loving and accepting her unusual child had sparked a transformation that continued to unfold in ever more beautiful and surprising ways. The universe hadn't just found harmony. It had remembered how to love every aspect of its own infinite nature. The Dark One and Celestia, standing beside her, had evolved into beings that defied their original names and natures. They were now embodiments of cosmic possibility, their forms constantly shifting through endless combinations of light, shadow, and states that had no names. Together, they had become living examples of how apparent opposites could evolve into something far more complex and beautiful than simple balance. "Your story," they said to Aurora, their voices blending in perfect harmony, "will be told across all realms and all scales of existence, not just as a tale of how harmony was restored, but as an eternal reminder that love is the force that allows the universe to reimagine itself. Through your love for Dawn, you showed all of creation how to love itself in all its forms." And so the tale that began with a mother bear giving birth to an unusual child became woven into the very fabric of reality. It was whispered by quantum particles, sung by stars, dreamed by galaxies, and celebrated by beings throughout all realms. It was a story that never truly ended, because each telling sparked new forms of harmony, new ways of being, new expressions of the infinite dance between light and shadow, and all the beautiful states in between. Dawn, their siblings, and their mother had not just changed the universe. They had reminded it of its own infinite potential for love, growth, and celebration. And in every moment, somewhere in the vast cosmic dance, a new being was discovering its own unique way to join the eternal symphony of existence. "How long will it take to reach the temple?" she asked, already knowing they couldn't afford to rest for long. The eclipse was growing closer with each passing day, and her children still had so much to learn.